The entire ballroom fell silent when Rhett Maddox walked past every eligible woman in Red Hollow and stopped in front of Clara Whitmore, the invisible daughter nobody wanted. In a town where beauty meant survival and status meant everything, his choice wasn't just unexpected. It was dangerous. What happened next would shatter reputations, ignite jealousy, and force one forgotten woman to decide if she could believe in her own worth. This is the story of the woman nobody chose, until someone finally saw her. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The trading post smelled like leather, dust, and forgotten dreams. Clara Whitmore stood behind the counter, her hands rough from years of hauling crates, and her dress plain because no one looked at her anyway. She was 26 years old, which meant she'd crossed the invisible line from marriageable to forgotten. The town had made its judgment years ago. Clara was useful. Clara was reliable. Clara would always be there, keeping her family's business alive while prettier women got chosen. She'd stopped fighting that truth around the time her younger sister got engaged. "Miss Whitmore," a deep voice cut through her thoughts. Clara looked up from the ledger she'd been pretending to focus on. The man standing across the counter was tall, broad-shouldered, and completely unfamiliar. Dark hair, darker eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His clothes were expensive but worn from travel. A rancher, she guessed. Maybe a cattle buyer. "Help you with something?" Her tone was flat, professional. She'd learned not to waste warmth on strangers who'd forget her face the moment they walked outside. "Land maps." He set his hat on the counter between them. "Detailed ones. I'm looking to purchase property in the territory, and I was told you keep the best records in Red Hollow." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" "Sheriff mentioned it. Said if I wanted accurate information, I should skip the land office and come straight here." He glanced around the trading post, taking in the organized shelves, the neat rows of supplies, the meticulous inventory system Clara had spent years perfecting. "I can see why." She pulled out the territory maps without comment, spreading them across the counter. Most men who came in here wanted quick answers so they could leave. She'd give him what he needed and send him on his way. "What kind of land are you looking for?" "Cattle grazing, water access, room to expand." He leaned over the map, studying the marked boundaries. "I'm building something permanent, not interested in quick profit." Clara traced her finger along the northern ridge. "This section has 3 water sources and connects to open range. The soil's good, but you'd need to check for claim disputes. Half the territory's tangled in legal fights." "And you'd know which half?" "I know all of it." She met his eyes directly. "My father documented every transaction, every claim, every failed deal for 30 years. I've maintained the record since he passed." Something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe, or surprise that she'd spoken more than 5 words. "Rhett Maddox." He extended his hand across the counter. She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm but not overwhelming. "Clara Whitmore." "The Clara Whitmore who runs this place?" "There's only one." "I heard you had a sister." Of course he had. Everyone knew about Lily. Beautiful, charming Lily, who could make men forget their own names. Clara pulled her hand back and returned her attention to the map. "Lily doesn't work here. You want the land records or not?" "I do." Rhett didn't move. "And I'd like your opinion on something." "I don't give opinions, I give facts." "Even better." He pointed to a section near the southern boundary. "This property's listed for half the price of comparable land. Why?" Clara glanced at the location and almost smiled. Almost. "Because the previous owner tried to raise cattle there and lost everything. The water source dries up midsummer, and the winter winds come through that valley hard enough to kill livestock. It's cheap because it's worthless." The land office didn't mention that. "The land office gets paid on commission." Rhett studied her for a long moment. "What would you buy? If you were building a ranch?" "I'm not building a ranch." Hypothetically, Clara sighed and pulled out a different map. This one marked with her own annotations. She'd spent years studying this territory, learning its patterns, understanding what worked and what didn't. Not because she'd ever used the information, women didn't own ranches, but because knowledge was the only thing she'd ever been good at accumulating. "Here," she tapped a section northwest of town. "High elevation, protected valley, year-round creek, and enough timber to build what you need. It's harder to access, which keeps the price down, but the land's solid. Why hasn't someone claimed it already? Because most men want easy. That land requires work. Rhett smiled. Actually, smiled. You always this direct? You asked for my opinion. I gave it. So you did. He folded the map carefully. I'll need to survey the property. Would you be willing to show me the boundaries? Clara blinked. What? You know the territory better than anyone. I'd pay for your time. I run a trading post. I don't guide strangers through the wilderness. Why not? Because women didn't do that. Because it would cause talk. Because the last thing she needed was more reasons for this town to whisper about her. Find someone else, Mr. Maddox. I'm asking you. And I'm saying no. He didn't argue, just nodded, picked up his hat, and left $3 silver on the counter. For the maps and your time, I'll be back tomorrow. Clara stared at the coins long after he'd gone. $3 for 10 minutes of conversation. Either he was terrible with money, or he was trying to make some kind of point. She didn't trust either option. Well, Rhett Maddox came back the next day, and the day after that. He asked questions about water rights, grazing patterns, and winter survival. He listened when she answered. Actually listened, like her words mattered more than whatever he'd already decided. It was unsettling. You're wasting your money, Clara told him on the 4th visit. Everything I'm telling you is already in the public records. Public records don't include whether the information's accurate. Rhett leaned against the counter like he had all the time in the world. You've saved me from 3 bad investments already. That's called common sense. Common sense isn't that common. Clara almost laughed. She caught herself just in time and returned to sorting inventory. Laughing led to familiarity, and familiarity led to disappointment. She'd learned that lesson young. The property northwest of town, Rhett said. I surveyed it yesterday. You were right about everything. I usually am. So I'm noticing. He paused. I'd like to make an offer on the land, but I need someone who understands the territory to help me plan the ranch layout. Water management, seasonal patterns, all of it. Hire a surveyor. I'm hiring you. Clara's hand stilled. Mr. Maddox. Rhett. Mr. Maddox, she repeated firmly. I don't know what you think this is, but I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing. His expression shifted. Not anger. Something closer to confusion. Game. Men like you don't ask women like me for help unless they want something else. Men like me. Wealthy. Educated. From somewhere that matters. She met his eyes without flinching. You could hire any expert in the territory. You don't need me. You're right. I don't need you. Rhett's voice was quiet. I want your help because you're the best. If that's a game, it's a stupid one. Clara wanted to believe him. That was the problem. She wanted to believe that someone saw her as more than the invisible daughter running her family's failing business. But wanting things had only ever led to heartbreak. I'll think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. Rhett nodded and left without pushing. That night, Clara's mother cornered her in the kitchen. People are talking. Margaret Whitmore set down her tea with a sharp click. About you and that rancher. There's nothing to talk about. He's been to the trading post 4 times this week. He's a customer. He's a wealthy man from the Southern Territories, and he's been seen speaking with you for extended periods. Her mother's voice carried the kind of disappointment Clara had grown up hearing. You need to be careful. Careful of what? Of misunderstanding his intentions. Margaret's expression softened into something almost pitying. Men like Rhett Maddox don't court women like you, Clara. They marry beauty and connections. If he's being friendly, it's because he finds you useful. The words landed like they always did, sharp and precise. I'm aware of what I am, Mother. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect you. Margaret reached across the table but didn't quite touch her daughter's hand. Your sister has opportunities you never had. That's not your fault. But you can't afford to misread kindness for something more. Clara stood up. Is there anything else? Just be smart. Smart. Clara had been smart her whole life, smart enough to know her place, smart enough to keep her head down and her expectations low. Smart enough to understand that women who looked like her didn't get fairy tales. She went to bed that night and didn't sleep. The town gathering happened every month, a forced social event where Red Hollow's citizens pretended they enjoyed each other's company. Clara usually avoided them, but her mother insisted both daughters attend. Lily needed to be seen, and Clara needed to exist in the background, she supposed. The community hall was packed with bodies and noise. Clara found a corner near the refreshment table and tried to become invisible. It usually worked. "You're hiding." She turned to find Rhett standing beside her holding 2 cups of punch. He offered her one. "I'm not hiding. I'm observing." "From the darkest corner of the room." "Best vantage point." Rhett smiled and took a sip of his drink, then immediately grimaced. "That's awful." "It's Mrs. Peterson's recipe. She makes it every month." "And nobody's told her it tastes like sweetened vinegar?" "This is Red Hollow. We're too polite to be honest." "Except you." Clara shrugged. "I stopped being polite around the same time people stopped noticing me." "I noticed you." The words hung between them, too heavy for casual conversation. Clara set down her cup before she could drop it. "Mr. Maddox." "We're back to Mr. Maddox?" "We never left it." Rhett moved closer, not touching, but near enough that she could smell leather and sage. "I bought the land, the property you recommended. My offer was accepted this morning." "Congratulations." "I meant what I said about needing help. The offer stands, if you're interested." Clara looked across the room. Her sister was surrounded by admirers, laughing at something one of them said. Her mother stood with the other society matrons, projecting respectability. Nobody was looking at Clara. Nobody ever looked at Clara, except him. "Why me?" The question came out before she could stop it. Rhett didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Because you see things other people miss. Because you know this land better than anyone I've met. Because when you talk about water patterns and soil quality, you actually give a damn." He paused. "And because every time I ask someone in this town for advice, they tell me what they think I want to hear. You tell me the truth. The truth isn't always profitable." "No, but it's valuable." Clara wanted to say yes, wanted it so badly her chest ached. But fear had been her companion longer than hope, and fear was winning. "I need time." "Take all the time you need." Rhett set down his cup. "I'm not going anywhere." He walked away before she could respond, crossing the room to speak with the sheriff. Clara watched him go and tried to ignore the way her heart was beating too fast. "Clara Whitmore, are you blushing?" She turned to find Sarah Chen, one of the few women in town who'd ever bothered being kind to her. Sarah ran the general store and had a gift for seeing through polite lies. "I'm not blushing." "You're definitely blushing." Sarah's eyes sparkled. "That was Rhett Maddox, wasn't it? The cattle baron everyone's gossiping about?" "Everyone's gossiping? Oh, honey, this town hasn't had this much excitement since the Harrison twins got into that knife fight over a card game." Sarah leaned closer. "Half the eligible women are trying to figure out how to get his attention. The other half are convinced their daughters are going to marry him." Clara's stomach sank. "I see. But he was talking to you." "He needs land advice." "Mm-hmm." Sarah's tone suggested she didn't believe that for a second. "And that's why he's been staring at you for the last 10 minutes. He hasn't—" Clara turned. Rhett was across the room, but he was looking directly at her. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. "I need air." Clara headed for the door before Sarah could ask more questions. Outside, the night was cold and clear. Clara wrapped her shawl tighter and tried to steady her breathing. This was ridiculous. She was 26 years old, not some foolish girl who believed in romance. Rhett Maddox was a businessman who needed help with his property. Nothing more. Running away? She spun around. Rhett stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall's warm glow. "I needed air." "So did I. That room's suffocating." "Then why come to these things?" "Same reason you do, I'd guess." "Obligation." He walked down the steps and stood beside her, both of them looking out at the dark street. "My father used to say that society gatherings were where business really happened. All the important decisions got made over punch and gossip." "Your father was probably right." "He usually was. Didn't make him easy to live with." Clara glanced sideways at Rhett. For the first time, he looked tired. "You don't talk about your family much." "Not much to say. My parents are gone. I had a younger brother who died in a riding accident 5 years ago." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the grief underneath. "After that, I couldn't stay in the same place. Too many memories." So you came here. So I came here. Rhett turned to face her. Fresh start, new territory, a chance to build something that's mine instead of inheriting something that was theirs. Clara understood that more than he knew. The trading post was my father's dream, not mine. But after he died, someone had to keep it running. My mother couldn't do it, and Lily, she trailed off. Lily's not built for ledgers and inventory. Lily's built for better things. Better. Rhett's tone suggested he disagreed with the word choice. Your sister's beautiful, I'll give her that. But beauty's common, Clara. Half the women in that room are beautiful. You know what's rare? She didn't answer. Competence, intelligence. Someone who looks at a map and sees possibility instead of property lines. He stepped closer. I've met 100 beautiful women. I've met maybe 5 who could tell me why a water source matters more than proximity to town. That's just knowledge. No, it's expertise. There's a difference. Clara's throat felt tight. You don't know me. I'd like to. Why? Because every conversation I have with you makes me think. Rhett's smile was soft. Because you challenge my assumptions. Because when you told me that Southern property was worthless, you didn't care if it hurt my feelings. You cared about being right. Most people hate that about me. Most people are idiots. This time Clara did laugh. Short and surprised, but real. Rhett's expression shifted into something warm and satisfied. There it is. What? The first genuine smile I've gotten from you. He tilted his head. You should do that more often. Maybe I don't have much to smile about. Then I'll have to change that. The door to the hall opened and voices spilled out. Clara stepped back instinctively, putting distance between them. Rhett noticed, but didn't comment. Sarah Chen appeared on the steps, followed by 3 other women Clara vaguely recognized. They were all staring. Clara, your mother's looking for you, Sarah said, her eyes bouncing between Clara and Rhett with obvious curiosity. I'll be right there. The women went back inside, but Clara knew the damage was done. By tomorrow, the entire town would know that Rhett Maddox had followed her outside. The gossip would be relentless. I should go. Clara. Thank you for the conversation, Mr. Maddox, but this isn't... I can't... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't explain that hope was dangerous and disappointment was guaranteed, and she'd rather die than let this town watch her fall for someone who'd eventually realize she wasn't worth the trouble. She went back inside before he could respond. The rumors started the next morning. Claire heard them while she was opening the trading post. 2 women stood outside the seamstress shop across the street, their voices carrying in the early quiet. Shameless, really, throwing herself at him like that? Well, what did you expect? She's desperate, 26 and unmarried. I heard she followed him outside. I heard he followed her, but only because she'd been making eyes at him all night. Clara's hand stilled on the lock. She should have expected this, should have known that one conversation would turn into a scandal. This town had nothing better to do than tear down women who stepped out of line. She opened the shop and tried to focus on work. Rhett showed up an hour later. I heard the gossip. He didn't bother with pleasantries. I'm sorry. Clara kept her eyes on the inventory sheet. Not your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who followed you outside. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. Rhett leaned against the counter. But they're making you the villain anyway. That's what this town does. She finally looked up at him. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Maddox, I've been the disappointing daughter my entire life. I'm not pretty enough, not charming enough, not enough of anything that matters. If the worst thing people say about me is that I had a conversation with a man, I'll survive. Is that really what you think? That you're not enough? It's what I know. Rhett was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened up and crossed his arms. All right, then I'm going to prove you wrong. What? I'm going to court you, Clara Whitmore. Publicly, properly. And I'm going to keep doing it until you understand that you're worth more than this town's ever given you credit for. Clara's heart stopped. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You'll destroy your reputation. I don't care about my reputation. You should. She came around the counter, desperate to make him understand. This town will turn on you. The people with money and influence will shut you out. You'll lose business opportunities, social connections, everything that matters. None of that matters more than you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Clara took a step back, shaking her head. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Rhett moved closer. I came to this territory looking for land and a fresh start. I found both, but I also found you. And I'm not walking away from that because people gossip. They'll do more than gossip. Let them. Rhett. His name slipped out before she could stop it. He noticed, smiled. Say that again. What? My name. You've been calling me Mr. Maddox for 2 weeks. Say my name again. This isn't a game. I know it's not. That's why I'm being honest. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I like you, Clara. I like talking to you. I like the way your mind works. I like that you don't pretend to be something you're not. And I want to know you better, if you'll let me. Clara stared at their joined hands. His was larger, rougher, warm against her perpetually cold fingers. She should pull away, should protect herself before this went any further. But she didn't want to. If we do this, she said quietly, it won't be easy. Nothing worth having is. People will try to convince you to change your mind. They'll fail. My mother will think you're making a mistake. Your mother doesn't get a vote. Clara looked up at him. Rhett's expression was steady, certain, completely without doubt. She wished she could borrow some of that certainty. I'm not good at this, at letting people in. Then we'll figure it out together. What if I disappoint you? What if you don't? The question hung between them. Clara had spent her entire life preparing for failure, for disappointment, for the inevitable moment when people realized she wasn't worth their time. She'd never once considered the possibility that she might actually be enough. One condition, she finally said. Name it. If you change your mind, you tell me. You don't just disappear or make excuses, you be honest. Something shifted in Rhett's expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of just how badly she'd been hurt before. I promise, same goes for you. I won't change my mind. Good. He squeezed her hand gently. Then we're agreed. I'm courting you, Red Hollow can gossip all it wants, and we're both going to be honest, starting now. Starting now, Clara echoed. Rhett smiled, and for the first time in years, Clara felt something that might have been hope. It was terrifying. Bolt? The courtship became Red Hollow's primary source of entertainment. Rhett took Clara to dinner at the town's only restaurant. He walked with her through the market on Saturday mornings. He sat beside her at church and didn't care that every eye in the congregation was watching them. He was public, deliberate, and completely unbothered by the scandal. Clara was bothered by all of it. People are staring, she whispered during Sunday service. Let them stare, Rhett whispered back. Mrs. Peterson just turned completely around in her pew. Mrs. Peterson needs better hobbies. Rhett. He looked at her, and his expression was so warm that Clara forgot what she'd been about to say. You're doing fine. I'm sweating through my dress. You look beautiful. I look nervous. Beautiful and nervous, then. He took her hand under cover of the hymnal they were supposed to be sharing. Breathe, Clara. I've got you. She wanted to believe him, but years of being invisible didn't disappear just because one man noticed her. Every time someone stared, every time she heard whispered comments, Clara felt the old familiar fear creeping back. She wasn't enough. She'd never been enough. And eventually, Rhett would realize it. After the service, Lily cornered her outside. This is getting out of hand. Her sister's perfect face was tight with concern. Mother's worried sick. Mother's always worried. Can you blame her? Rhett Maddox is one of the wealthiest men in the territory, and you're... Lily trailed off. I'm what? You're not the kind of woman men like him marry, Clara. I'm sorry, but it's true. He's going to realize that eventually, and when he does, you're going to be heartbroken. Lily grabbed her arm. End this now before it gets worse. Clara pulled free. And if I don't want to end it, then you're setting yourself up for disaster. Lily's voice dropped. I love you. I'm trying to protect you. By telling me I'm not good enough? By being realistic. Lily glanced over Clara's shoulder. He's coming this way. Please just think about what I said. She left before Rhett arrived. Everything all right? He asked, watching Lily disappear into the crowd. Fine, Clara forced a smile. My sister's just concerned. About? The usual. My inevitable humiliation when you come to your senses. Rhett's expression darkened. She said that? She said it nicer. That doesn't make it less insulting. He offered his arm. Walk with me? They ended up near the creek that ran along the edge of town. The water was low this time of year, exposing smooth stones and tangled roots. Clara sat on a fallen log and watched the current move. Your sister's wrong, Rhett said quietly. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He sat beside her. I know that every conversation we have makes me want another one. I know that you're the only person in this town who tells me the truth instead of what they think I want to hear. I know that when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm playing a role. Clara picked up a stone and turned it over in her hands. What role were you playing before? The successful rancher, the confident businessman, the man who has everything figured out. Rhett laughed quietly. I came here because I was running away from grief and expectations. I thought if I built something new, I could leave the old pain behind. But it doesn't work that way. No, it doesn't. You understand that? Most people don't. Clara threw the stone into the water. My father died when I was 19. I was supposed to grieve for a few months, then move on. Get married, start a family, live the life everyone expected. But I couldn't do any of that because the trading post was failing and my mother was falling apart and Lily was too young to help. She looked at Rhett. So I took over, learned the business, paid the debts, kept everything running. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being Clara and became the woman who manages things. You're still Clara. Am I? Because most days I'm not sure. Rhett was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and offered his hand. Come with me. Where? You'll see. He led her through town, past the church and the general store, to the property he'd purchased. The land stretched out in rolling hills, wild and untamed. Rhett stopped at the crest of the highest hill and gestured at the view. What do you see? Clara scanned the landscape. Possibility, good water sources, shelter from winter storms, a long-term investment if you manage it right. That's the land expert talking. What does Clara see? She didn't know how to answer that. Nobody had ever asked her to separate who she was from what she did. I don't understand the question. When you look at this land, what do you want? Not what's practical or profitable. What speaks to you? Clara studied the valley. Evening light was turning everything gold. The wind smelled like sage and rain that might come later. It was beautiful in a raw, honest way that reminded her of why she'd stayed in this territory despite everything. Freedom, she said quietly. Space to breathe. A place where the rules are simpler. Then that's what we'll build. Rhett turned to face her. Not just a ranch, a life. Together. If you're willing. Clara's chest felt too tight. You're moving too fast. Am I? Or are you so used to being overlooked that you can't recognize when someone sees you? The words hit harder than he probably meant them to. Because he was right. Clara had spent so long being invisible that visibility felt like exposure, like vulnerability, like danger. I'm scared, she admitted. Of me? Of this. Of wanting something and losing it. She met his eyes. Everyone I've ever cared about has either left or disappointed me. I don't know how to trust that you won't do the same. Rhett stepped closer. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you. I'm human, Clara. I'll make mistakes. But I can promise I won't leave. I can promise I'll be honest, even when it's hard. And I can promise that when I look at you, I see someone extraordinary. I'm not extraordinary. Yes, you are. You just don't see it yet. He cupped her face gently. Let me show you. Clara closed her eyes. The touch was careful, reverent, completely unlike anything she'd expected. When she opened her eyes again, Rhett was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. I'm going to kiss you now, he said quietly. If you don't want that, tell me. She should say no, should protect herself, should remember that fairy tales didn't happen to women like her. Instead, she said, yes. The kiss was gentle, tentative, like he was afraid she'd break. Clara had never been kissed before, not really, and she didn't know what to do with her hands or how to breathe or if she was doing any of this right. But Rhett didn't seem to care. When they finally pulled apart, He rested his forehead against hers. I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. Clara wanted to believe him. She was starting to. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Clara still worked at the trading post. Rhett still spent his days surveying land and meeting with contractors. But now there was something between them that felt both fragile and inevitable, like the first ice forming over the creek before winter truly arrived. Red Hollow noticed immediately. I heard they were kissing in broad daylight, Mrs. Peterson announced loudly enough for half the market to hear. Clara was 3 stalls away, pretending to examine vegetables she had no intention of buying. Shameless, someone agreed. That girl has always been too forward. Clara's fingers tightened on a potato. She'd been called many things in her life, plain, forgettable, useful, but never forward. That was a new development. Leave it alone, Margaret, Sarah Chen's voice cut through the gossip. If you spent half as much energy minding your own business as you do minding everyone else's, this town might actually be tolerable. Clara glanced over to find Sarah glaring at Mrs. Peterson with the kind of controlled fury that came from years of dealing with small-town cruelty. The older woman huffed and moved to a different stall, taking her audience with her. Sarah caught Clara's eye and gave a small nod. Clara nodded back, grateful and embarrassed in equal measure. The problem wasn't the gossip itself. Clara had lived with gossip her entire life. The problem was that now she had something to lose. Before Rhett, she'd been invisible. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant nobody cared enough to tear her down. Now she was visible, and visibility came with teeth. She bought the potato she didn't need and walked back to the trading post, trying to ignore the stares that followed her down the street. Rhett was waiting on the steps. You're here early, Clara said, fumbling with her keys. Wanted to see you. He took the basket from her hands without asking. How was the market? Educational. That bad? Clara unlocked the door and stepped inside, breathing easier once she was out of public view. Mrs. Peterson informed everyone within earshot that we were kissing in broad daylight. We were. That's not helping. Rhett set the basket on the counter and turned to face her. Do you regret it? The kiss? No. Clara started unpacking vegetables she didn't remember selecting. The public spectacle? Yes. We weren't that public. We were public enough. She lined up 3 potatoes in a row, then realized how ridiculous that looked and shoved them into a crate instead. This town has nothing better to do than watch people fail, and they're all waiting for you to realize you made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. You don't know that yet. Rhett caught her wrist gently, stopping her manic organizing. Clara, look at me. She did. His expression was steady, patient, completely unruffled by the chaos she felt spinning inside her chest. I'm not going to wake up one morning and decide you're not worth the trouble. That's not how this works. How does it work then? I don't know. I've never done this before either. He released her wrist but didn't step back. But I know I'd rather figure it out with you than play it safe with someone who doesn't make me feel anything. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was temporary, all the ways it would eventually fall apart. But she was tired of fighting against something that felt good for the first time in years. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Okay, I'll try. To trust this, to believe you. She took a breath. But if the gossip gets worse, if people start making business difficult for you because of me, then I'll handle it. You're not responsible for other people's small-mindedness. That's easy to say when you're not the one they've been judging your entire life. Rhett was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My brother was the golden child. Charming, athletic, everything my father wanted in an heir. I was the spare, the backup plan, the son who was never quite good enough. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the old pain underneath. When he died, everyone expected me to step up and become him. I tried for 2 years, nearly destroyed myself trying to be someone I wasn't. What stopped you? I realized that living up to everyone else's expectations meant dying inside. He met her eyes. So I left. Sold everything I could, took what was mine, and came here to build something that was actually mine. Not my father's vision, not my brother's legacy. Mine. Clara understood that better than he probably knew. And what if what you build here isn't what people expect either? Then at least it'll be honest. Rhett smiled slightly. I'd rather have an honest life with you than a perfect life with someone who makes me feel hollow. The words settled into Clara's chest like stones dropping into deep water. She'd spent so long believing she was the consolation prize, the woman men settled for when they couldn't have better. Hearing Rhett say the opposite didn't erase 26 years of doubt, but it made a crack in the foundation. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Do what?" "Be the woman someone chooses. Be wanted." The confession felt like peeling back skin. "I've been invisible so long, I don't know how to be anything else." Rhett stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes were more brown than black in the light. "Then let me see you. The real you, not the version you think you're supposed to be." "What if you don't like what you find?" "What if I do?" Clara laughed, but it came out shaky. "You're very confident." "No, I'm very sure about you." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "There's a difference." Someone knocked on the trading post door. Clara jumped back instinctively, putting distance between them before whoever it was could see. Rhett noticed, but didn't comment. "We're closed," Clara called out. "It's your mother, Clara. Open the door." Clara's stomach dropped. She glanced at Rhett, who raised an eyebrow but stepped aside. She unlocked the door. Margaret Whitmore swept in like a cold front, her expression tight with displeasure. She looked at Rhett, then at Clara, then back at Rhett. "Mr. Maddox, how convenient that you're here." "Mrs. Whitmore." Rhett's tone was polite but not warm. "I need to speak with my daughter, privately." "Mother—" "It's fine." Rhett picked up his hat from the counter. "I should get back to the property anyway." He looked at Clara. "Dinner tomorrow?" "I'll pick you up at 6. It was a deliberate statement, made in front of her mother. Clara wanted to kiss him for it. Instead, she just nodded. 6. He left, and the trading post suddenly felt smaller. Margaret waited until his footsteps faded before speaking. "This has gone far enough. We're just having dinner. You're letting him court you publicly. Do you have any idea what people are saying?" "I know exactly what they're saying. I heard it at the market this morning." "Then you understand why this needs to stop." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Clara, I know you think he cares about you, but men like Rhett Maddox don't marry women like us." Women like us. Women without beauty or connections or anything to offer except competence. Her mother's expression was genuinely sad. "You're useful, darling. That's not the same as desirable." The words landed with practiced precision. Clara had heard variations of this speech her entire life, but it never stopped hurting. "What do you want me to do? End it?" "Before you get hurt, yes." "Maybe I'd rather take the risk." Margaret's composure cracked slightly. "You think I'm being cruel. I'm trying to protect you from the same heartbreak I suffered." Clara went still. "What?" "Your father wasn't my first choice. I was young and foolish, and I fell in love with a man who promised me the world." Her mother's voice was distant, remembering. "He courted me for 6 months, made me believe I was special. Then he married a banker's daughter, and I was left with nothing but gossip and pity." "You never told me that." "Because it was humiliating. Because I learned a hard lesson that I've tried to spare you from learning." Margaret reached out and touched Clara's shoulder briefly. "I married your father because he was safe, kind, reliable. It wasn't passion, but it was stable. And I need you to be smart enough to recognize when a man is offering you fantasy instead of reality." Clara pulled away. "Rhett's not offering me fantasy, isn't he? A wealthy rancher sweeping into town and courting the plain daughter instead of the beautiful one? That's the kind of story people tell themselves in novels, Clara. It doesn't happen in real life." "Maybe it does, and you just can't see it because you stopped believing." Her mother's expression hardened. "Belief doesn't change reality. And the reality is that men like Rhett Maddox marry women who enhance their status. You're a liability to his reputation. Then he'll figure that out himself. By the time he does, you'll be ruined. I'm already ruined according to this town. At least now I'm ruined for something that felt good." Margaret stared at her daughter like she was seeing a stranger. "When did you become this reckless?" "When I realized being careful hadn't gotten me anything worth having." Clara, I appreciate your concern, Mother, but I'm 26 years old and I've spent my entire life doing what was expected, being useful, being quiet, being invisible. Clara's voice shook but didn't break. For once, someone sees me. Someone wants me. And I'm not walking away from that because you're afraid. I'm afraid because I love you. Then trust me to make my own choices, even if they're the wrong ones. Margaret looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Clara's expression must have stopped her. She gathered her shawl and moved toward the door, then paused. When it falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you. She left without waiting for a response. Clara stood alone in the trading post, surrounded by inventory and account books and all the familiar trappings of the life she'd built through necessity rather than choice. Her hands were shaking. She'd just chosen Rhett over her mother's approval, over safety, over the careful, measured life that had protected her from disappointment. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever done. That evening, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept replaying her mother's words, looking for the lie in them, and finding too much truth. Rhett was wealthy, educated, from a world that should have had nothing to do with Red Hollow's invisible daughter. Every logical part of her brain said this would end badly. But there was another part, smaller, quieter, harder to silence, that whispered, maybe. Maybe this time was different. Maybe she was worth choosing. Maybe Rhett saw something in her that everyone else had missed. She wanted to believe the maybe more than she'd ever wanted anything. The next morning brought rain. Heavy, relentless sheets that turned the streets to mud and kept most people indoors. Clara opened the trading post anyway, more out of habit than expectation. Nobody would come out in this weather. She was wrong. The door opened at 9, admitting a drenched figure in a dark coat. Clara looked up from her ledger and froze. Victoria Brennan stood in her doorway. Victoria was everything Clara wasn't. Beautiful in the way that made men forget basic conversation. Wealthy enough that she'd never worked a day in her life. Connected to every important family between here and the Southern Territories. She was also Rhett's neighbor, owned property adjacent to his new land, and had made her interest in him abundantly clear at every social gathering since his arrival. Miss Whitmore. Victoria's smile was sharp. I hope I'm not interrupting. The shop's open. Can I help you with something? Actually, I was hoping we could talk, woman to woman. Victoria pulled off her gloves with deliberate care. About Rhett Maddox. Clara's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Oh, I think you do. Victoria wandered through the shop, trailing fingers over merchandise like she was inspecting it for flaws. You're courting him, or he's courting you. The town can't quite decide which is more scandalous. Is there a point to this conversation? The point is that you're making a mistake, and I'm trying to save you from embarrassment. Clara set down her pen. How considerate. I know you think I'm being catty. I'm not. I'm being practical. Victoria turned to face her. Rhett's a good man. Honorable, intelligent, exactly the kind of husband any woman would want. But he's also grieving his family and looking for something to anchor himself to in a new place. You're convenient, Clara. Accessible. Safe. You don't know anything about him. I know more than you think. My father's done business with his family for years. I knew his brother. Victoria's expression softened into something that might have been genuine sympathy. Rhett loved Michael more than anything. When he died, it destroyed something in Rhett. He's trying to rebuild it with you, but he's not seeing you clearly. He's seeing a project, a distraction. The words hit harder than Clara wanted to admit because they echoed her own fears too closely. What do you want? Clara asked quietly. I want you to understand what you're getting into. Rhett needs someone who can match him socially, someone who understands his world and can help him navigate it. You're a shopkeeper's daughter from a dying business. You can't give him what he needs. And you can? Yes. Victoria said it simply, without arrogance, just fact. My family has the connections he needs to expand his ranch. I understand the social obligations that come with wealth. I can help him build the life he's trying to create. She paused. You'll hold him back. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, to list all the reasons Victoria was wrong. But the truth was, she'd been thinking the same thing since Rhett first showed interest. She wasn't enough. She'd never be enough. Thank you for your concern, Clara managed, but my relationship with Rhett is between him and me. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're letting him sacrifice his future for a temporary infatuation. Victoria pulled her gloves back on. I'm not trying to be cruel, Clara. I'm trying to be honest. Ask yourself if you really believe a man like Rhett Maddox would choose you if he had any other option. She left before Clara could respond. The trading post felt oppressively quiet after she was gone. Rain drummed against the roof. Water dripped from a leak Clara kept meaning to fix. She sat behind the counter and tried to remember how to breathe. Victoria was right. That was the worst part. Everything she'd said was logical, reasonable, exactly what Clara had been telling herself for weeks. Rhett deserved someone who could match his world, someone who wouldn't embarrass him at social functions or limit his business opportunities, someone who wasn't her. But then she remembered the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked about land and water rights like her knowledge actually mattered, the way he'd kissed her like she was something precious instead of convenient. That had to mean something, didn't it? The door opened again. Clara looked up, expecting another lecture. It was Rhett, soaked through and grinning. "You came out in this?" she asked. "I told you I'd pick you up at 6. Wanted to confirm you hadn't changed your mind." He shook water from his coat like a dog, spraying drops across the floor. "It's 9 in the morning." "I know, but I was thinking about you and figured I'd stop by." He leaned against the counter. "Also, I need your opinion on something." Clara's throat felt tight. "What?" "The ranch house. I've got 3 different designs from the architect, and I can't decide which one makes the most sense for the terrain." He pulled folded papers from inside his coat. "Thought you might have thoughts." He wasn't here to end things. He was here to ask for her help, to include her in his plans like she belonged there. "Rhett, I know what you're going to say. I'm interrupting your work. I should have sent a message. This could wait until dinner." He spread the plans across the counter. "But I wanted to see you. Is that allowed?" Clara looked at him, really looked. His hair was plastered to his head from rain. His expensive coat was probably ruined. He'd ridden through a storm just to ask her opinion on house plans he could have discussed with any architect or contractor. Victoria's words echoed in her head. Convenient, safe, a distraction. But if that was true, why was he here? Why did he keep choosing her when he had easier options? "Victoria Brennan was here this morning," Clara said before she could stop herself. Rhett's expression shifted. "What did she want?" "To remind me that I'm not good enough for you." "Clara, she said you're grieving and I'm convenient, that you need someone who matches your social position and can help your business." Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. Was she right? About which part? Any of it. Rhett was quiet for a long moment. Then he carefully refolded the house plans and set them aside. "Yes, I'm grieving. I probably will be for the rest of my life. Michael was my best friend, and losing him felt like losing half of myself." His voice was steady, but raw. "And yes, when I came here, I was looking for a fresh start. Something to fill the emptiness." Clara's heart sank. "But you're not filling emptiness, Clara. You're creating something new." Rhett moved around the counter until he was standing directly in front of her. "Every conversation I have with you makes me want to be better. Not because you demand it, but because you make me think. You challenge me. You don't let me get away with surface-level answers. That doesn't mean I'm the right choice for your future." "Why not?" "Because Victoria's right. I can't help you socially. I don't have connections or wealth or any of the things a man in your position needs." "I don't need those things. I want you." "You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow and next month and next year." Rhett caught her hands. "I know you don't believe me yet. I know you've spent your whole life being told you're not enough, but I'm going to keep showing up until you understand that you're everything I didn't know I was looking for." Clara's eyes burned. "What if I fail you? What if I fail you? That's the real question, isn't it?" His grip tightened. "You're terrified I'm going to wake up and realize you're not worth the trouble. But I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up and lose the best thing that's happened to me in years." "You're not going to mess it up." "How do you know?" "Because you're here, in the rain, asking my opinion on house plans." Clara laughed, but it came out watery. "Because you keep choosing me when you have every reason not to." "Then trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that when I say I want you, I mean it." She wanted to. She wanted to so badly her chest ached. But fear was a hard habit to break. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I'm asking." Rhett leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Now can we please look at these house plans? Because I genuinely need your help. and the architect is waiting for feedback. Clara pulled out the plans, grateful for something concrete to focus on. They spent the next hour discussing room layouts, water access, and structural considerations. Rhett listened to every suggestion, made notes, asked follow-up questions. He treated her expertise like it was valuable, because to him, it was. And slowly, Clara started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth choosing after all. The dinner invitation turned into a full evening, then a week of evenings, then a pattern that felt dangerously close to permanence. Rhett showed up at the trading post most afternoons, sometimes with questions about the ranch, sometimes just to talk. Clara found herself looking forward to the sound of his boots on the wooden steps, the way he'd lean against the counter and ask about her day like it actually mattered. But Red Hollow wasn't done testing them. The spring social gathering was announced 3 weeks after Victoria's visit. It was the territory's largest event, drawing people from towns 50 miles away. Ranchers came to make deals, families came to show off daughters, and everyone came to see who'd risen or fallen in the social hierarchy since last year. "You're going," Sarah Chen said, cornering Clara at the general store. "And you're wearing something that doesn't make you look like a widow." "I don't have anything else." "Then we're making something." Sarah pulled out a bolt of deep green fabric. "This would look good with your coloring." "I can't afford. It's not for sale. It's a gift." Sarah's expression left no room for argument. "You're going to that gathering on Rhett Maddox's arm, and you're going to look like you belong there." Clara touched the fabric. It was softer than anything she owned. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm tired of watching this town tear down anyone who dares to want something better." Sarah's voice was fierce. "And because you deserve to walk into that room without apologizing for existing." The dress came together over 2 weeks of late-night sewing sessions. Sarah insisted on teaching Clara how to fit the bodice properly, how to make the skirt fall right. It wasn't fancy by Red Hollow's standards, no elaborate beading or imported lace, but it was well made, and it fit Clara's frame instead of drowning it. "You look different," Lily said the night before the gathering. She'd come to the trading post under the pretense of borrowing thread, but Clara suspected their mother had sent her. "Sarah helped me make a new dress." "It's not just the dress." Lily circled her sister slowly. "You're standing differently, like you take up more space." Clara adjusted the neckline self-consciously. "Is that bad?" "No. It's just different." Lily sat on the counter, something she'd never done when they were younger. "Mother thinks you're making a mistake." "I know." "Are you?" Clara met her sister's eyes. "I don't know yet. But I'd rather make my own mistakes than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to try." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I envy you." "What?" "Everyone thinks I have everything. Beauty, attention, options." Lily's perfect face twisted into something bitter. "But all my options are the same. Marry someone appropriate, have children, host dinners, disappear into someone else's life and pretend I'm happy. You don't have to do that." "Don't I? What else am I qualified for? I can't run a business like you. I don't have skills or knowledge. I'm just pretty, and pretty doesn't last." Clara had never heard her sister sound so defeated. "Lily, I'm not asking for pity. I'm just saying I understand why you're taking the risk with Rhett." Lily slid off the counter. "And I hope it works out. Because if it does, maybe the rest of us will believe we can want something different too." She left before Clara could respond. The gathering was being held at the Brennan estate, which meant Victoria would be playing hostess. Clara tried not to think about what that meant, tried not to imagine Victoria pulling Rhett aside, reminding him of everything Clara lacked. Rhett arrived to pick her up exactly on time, driving a borrowed carriage because the walk was too far in formal clothes. He climbed down and stopped dead when he saw her. "What?" Clara touched her hair nervously. "Is something wrong?" "You're beautiful. You don't have to—" "Clara." He took her hands. "You're beautiful. Let me say it." She didn't know what to do with that, so she just let him help her into the carriage. They rode in comfortable silence for the first mile. Then Rhett said, "You're nervous. Is it that obvious? You've been holding your breath for the last 5 minutes." Clara exhaled deliberately. "I don't belong at these things." "Neither do I. You're wealthy. You automatically belong. I'm an outsider who bought land in a territory that doesn't trust strangers. The only reason anyone tolerates me is because I have money." Rhett glanced at her. "We're both pretending to fit in. At least we can pretend together. The Brennan estate was lit up like a small city. Carriages lined the drive and music spilled from the open doors. Clara could see people moving inside, a kaleidoscope of expensive dresses and tailored suits. Her stomach churned. "We can leave whenever you want," Rhett said quietly. "You just got here." "I don't care. If this is too much, we leave." Clara took a breath. "I'm fine." Liar. "I'm fine enough." She looked at him. "Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I've survived worse than gossip." "I know you have. That's why I'm giving you the option to choose this instead of forcing you through it." The distinction mattered. Clara squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Let's go inside before I change my mind." The ballroom was exactly as overwhelming as she'd feared. Crystal chandeliers, polished floors, tables laden with food most of Red Hollow couldn't afford. And people. So many people. All dressed in their finest, all turning to stare as Rhett entered with Clara on his arm. The whispers started immediately. "Is that Clara Whitmore? What is she doing here? Did he really bring her instead of— Good evening." Victoria appeared like she'd been waiting for them. She looked stunning in blue silk that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe. "Mr. Maddox, Miss Whitmore, so glad you could attend." "Thank you for the invitation," Rhett said smoothly. "Of course, any friend of my father's is welcome." Victoria's smile was razor sharp. "Miss Whitmore, what a lovely dress. Did you make it yourself?" "A friend helped." "How resourceful." Victoria turned her full attention to Rhett. "Mr. Maddox, my father wanted to speak with you about a business opportunity. Would you mind terribly if I stole you for a few minutes?" It was a trap. Clara knew it, and from the way Rhett's jaw tightened, he knew it too. But refusing would be insulting, and the Brennans had too much influence to offend casually. "I'll be right back," Rhett told Clara. "Take your time." She watched him disappear into the crowd with Victoria, then immediately regretted letting him go. She was alone in a room full of people who'd spent years either ignoring or judging her, wearing a homemade dress and pretending she had any right to be there. "Clara Whitmore. Never thought I'd see you at one of these." She turned to find Thomas Webb, a cattle buyer she'd dealt with at the trading post. He was older, weathered, and one of the few people in Red Hollow who'd ever treated her like she had a brain. "Mr. Webb, that your rancher?" He nodded toward where Rhett had disappeared. "He's not my anything." "That's not what I heard. Word is he's courting you proper. Caused quite the scandal." "Apparently." Thomas studied her. "You look miserable." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." He offered his arm. "Come on. Let's get you some air before you pass out from holding your breath." Clara let him guide her toward the veranda. The night air was cool and mercifully quiet. She could still hear music from inside, but the noise was muffled enough to think. "Thank you." "Don't mention it." Thomas leaned against the railing. "I've known you since you were a kid helping your father with inventory. You're smart as hell and tougher than most men I know. Don't let these vultures make you forget that." "They're not all vultures. Most of them are. Present company excluded, of course." He grinned. "Your rancher seemed solid, though. Asked good questions when he came by my office. Listened to answers instead of just waiting to talk." "That's Rhett." "You like him?" "It wasn't a question." Clara sighed. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to anyone with eyes. Question is, does he like you back, or is he just being polite?" "I don't know. Some days I think he really sees me. Other days I'm convinced I'm just a distraction until he finds someone better." "Have you asked him?" "Not directly." "Maybe you should." Thomas straightened up. "I've watched you run that trading post for 7 years. You negotiate with ranchers twice your size and don't blink, but you're scared of one conversation with a man who clearly thinks you hung the moon. Why?" Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Because if I ask and he says I'm wrong, it'll hurt. But if I ask and he says I'm right, I'll have to believe I deserve it. I don't know which one scares me more." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You're scared of being happy. That's self-sabotage, Clara, and you're better than that." Before she could respond, the veranda door opened. Rhett stepped out, spotted her, and his expression shifted from worried to relieved. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." "Victoria let you go?" I cut the conversation short. He joined them at the railing, nodding at Thomas. Webb. Maddox? Treating this one right, I hope. Doing my best. Good. Because if you hurt her, I know where you're building that ranch, and I have friends with very loose morals. Rhett smiled. Noted. Thomas left them alone. Clara watched the older man disappear back into the gathering, then turned to Rhett. What did Victoria want? To introduce me to her father and several business associates. They spent 20 minutes explaining how much easier my life would be if I partnered with the Brennan family. He looked at her. Victoria suggested that partnership might extend beyond business. Clara's stomach dropped. Oh. I told them I wasn't interested. You could have at least considered... No. Rhett's voice was firm. I couldn't, because I'm not interested in making my life easier at the cost of losing what actually matters. I'm not... If you say you're not worth it, I'm going to kiss you right here in front of everyone, just to prove you wrong. Clara's breath caught. You wouldn't. Try me. They stared at each other. Clara was acutely aware of how public they were, how many eyes might be watching from inside. Kissing here would confirm every rumor, fuel every piece of gossip, make their relationship impossible to deny or downplay. They'll talk, she said quietly. Let them. It'll make things harder for you. I don't care. Rhett, he cupped her face gently. I am trying very hard to respect your pace and not push you faster than you're ready to go. But I need you to understand something. This isn't temporary for me. This isn't a phase or a distraction or something I'm doing until better options appear. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I want you. Not despite who you are, but because of it. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise to make other people comfortable. Clara's eyes burned. What if I disappoint you? What if you don't? What if this works? What if we build something real and lasting and better than either of us expected? He leaned closer. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just be here with me. She kissed him. It was impulsive and terrifying and probably the worst decision she could make at a social gathering designed to scrutinize every social misstep. But Clara was tired of being afraid, tired of letting fear make her decisions, tired of believing she didn't deserve good things. Rhett made a surprised sound, then pulled her closer and kissed her back like she was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to find. Someone gasped inside the ballroom. Clara heard it clearly, followed by a rush of whispers. She pulled back slightly, breathing hard. We should go inside. We should leave. No. Clara straightened her shoulders. We're going back in there, together, and I'm going to stop apologizing for existing. Rhett's smile was brilliant. That's my girl. They walked back into the ballroom hand in hand. The whispers were louder now, less subtle. Clara felt every eye in the room tracking their movement, but instead of shrinking, she lifted her chin and met their stares directly. Victoria stood near the refreshment table, her expression carefully blank. Several other women clustered nearby, their faces ranging from shocked to delighted to furious. Clara recognized most of them, daughters of wealthy families, women who'd spent years competing for male attention, women who'd never once considered Clara competition. Well, one of them said, loudly enough to carry, I suppose some women have to settle for attention however they can get it. Clara felt Rhett tense beside her, but she squeezed his hand. Don't. She just insulted you. I know, I don't care. Clara, if you defend me, it proves I need defending. If I ignore her, it proves she's not worth my attention. Clara smiled slightly. I learned that from you. They continued through the ballroom. People parted for them, still staring, still whispering. But now Clara noticed something else beneath the gossip. Some of the younger women were watching her with what looked like envy. A few of the older couples were smiling, and Sarah Chen, standing near the far wall, raised her glass in a silent toast. The evening crawled by. Clara danced with Rhett twice, which set off another wave of speculation. She made polite conversation with people who'd ignored her for years. She endured Victoria's cutting remarks, and the matron's disapproval, and the general sense that she'd committed some unforgivable social crime. But she did it standing beside Rhett, instead of hiding in corners. And that felt like victory. They left around midnight, both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. The ride home was quiet until Rhett said, You were magnificent tonight. I was terrified. Terrified and magnificent aren't mutually exclusive. He glanced at her. You held your ground, didn't apologize, didn't shrink. I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. Clara's chest felt tight. I just got tired of being invisible. You were never invisible. People just weren't looking. And now they are. Now they are, Rhett agreed. How does it feel? Clara considered the question. Exposing, dangerous, like standing on a cliff edge. Want to step back? No. The answer surprised her. I want to see what happens next. Rhett pulled the carriage to a stop outside the trading post. The street was empty, the town sleeping. He helped her down, then didn't immediately let go. Clara. Yes? I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Her heart started racing. All right. Do you trust me? It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Clara thought about the last few weeks, the way Rhett showed up when he said he would, the way he listened to her opinions like they mattered, the way he'd turned down business opportunities and social advancement to stay beside her in a ballroom full of people who thought he was making a mistake. Yes, she said finally. I trust you. Good. Because I'm about to do something that's going to cause even more gossip than tonight did. What? Rhett dropped to one knee. Clara's brain stopped working. She stared at him, at the small box he'd pulled from his coat pocket, at the ring inside that caught moonlight and threw it back in sharp points. This is too fast, he said. I know that. We've only been courting for a few weeks, and conventional wisdom says I should wait at least a year. But I've never been good at conventional wisdom, and I'm tired of pretending I don't know what I want. He looked up at her. I want you, Clara, not someday, not eventually, now. I want to build a life with you. I want your help planning the ranch and your opinion on every decision and your voice in my head when I'm being stupid. I want to wake up beside you and fall asleep knowing you're there. I want everything, and I want it with you. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. You don't have to answer now, Rhett continued. Take all the time you need, but I needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. This isn't temporary. I'm all in, Clara. The question is whether you're willing to take that leap with me. She should say no. Should tell him it was too soon, too fast, too risky. Should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak. But looking at Rhett, kneeling in the dirt outside her family's failing trading post, offering her everything she'd ever wanted and never believed she deserved, Clara realized something. Fear had kept her safe, but it had also kept her small, and she was done being small. Yes, Rhett blinked. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to all of it. Clara's voice shook but didn't break. I'm terrified and I don't know if I'm making the right choice, but I'd rather take the risk with you than play it safe alone. Rhett stood up so fast he nearly dropped the ring. Then he was kissing her, deep and desperate and full of promise. Clara kissed him back and tried to remember how to breathe. When they finally broke apart, Rhett slid the ring onto her finger. It was simple, elegant, and fit perfectly. How did you know my size? I asked Sarah Chen. She measured your finger while you were sleeping during one of those late-night sewing sessions. Clara laughed. You've been planning this. Since the day you told me that Southern property was worthless and didn't care if it hurt my feelings. Rhett pulled her close. I knew right then that I'd never meet anyone like you again. You barely knew me. I knew enough. He kissed her forehead, and everything I've learned since then has just confirmed it. Clara leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her cheek. Tomorrow the gossip would be unbearable. Her mother would be furious. Victoria would be vindictive. The entire town would have opinions about what a mistake this was. But tonight, standing in the empty street with a ring on her finger and a man who'd chosen her completely, Clara didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was choosing herself too, and that felt like freedom. The news spread through Red Hollow faster than wildfire. By dawn, half the town knew that Rhett Maddox had proposed to Clara Whitmore in the middle of the street. By noon, the other half had heard 3 different versions, each more scandalous than the last. By evening, Clara's mother was standing in the trading post with an expression that could have curdled milk. You accepted him. Margaret's voice was flat. Clara kept sorting inventory, her hands steady even though her stomach was churning. I did. Without consulting me. Without discussing the implications, without any thought to how this will affect your sister's prospects. Lily's prospects are her own concern. Everything you do reflects on this family. Margaret moved closer. When this falls apart, and it will fall apart, we're the ones who'll have to live with the consequences. You'll be ruined, and by extension, so will Lily. Clara finally looked up. I'm 26 years old. I've run this business for 7 years. I've kept this family fed and housed through droughts and economic downturns and father's debts that you didn't even know existed. I think I've earned the right to make my own choices. This isn't a choice, it's self-destruction. Maybe, but it's mine. Her mother stared at her like she was looking at a stranger. When did you become so selfish? The word landed hard, but Clara didn't flinch. When I realized that putting everyone else first was killing me slowly. I'm marrying Rhett, Mother. You can accept it or not. But I'm done apologizing for wanting something for myself. Margaret left without another word. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Clara stood in the sudden silence and tried to ignore the way her hands were shaking. She'd just chosen Rhett over her family, over the approval she'd spent her entire life trying to earn. The weight of that decision pressed against her chest like a physical thing. That looked rough. She turned to find Sarah Chen in the doorway, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. How much did you hear? Enough to know you need this. Sarah set the basket on the counter. Fresh bread, honey, and a bottle of whiskey I've been saving for emergencies. It's 1 p.m. And you just told your mother to back off. If that's not an emergency, I don't know what is. Sarah pulled Clara into a quick, fierce hug. I'm proud of you. Clara's throat tightened. Everyone thinks I'm making a mistake. Everyone thought the earth was flat once. Didn't make them right. Sarah pulled back. You love him? I don't know, maybe. It's too soon to know. But you want to find out? Yes. Then that's enough. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. Stop letting other people's fear dictate your life. You deserve to be happy, Clara. Start believing it. After Sarah left, Clara tried to focus on work. She reorganized shelves that didn't need organizing, recounted inventory she'd already counted twice, and avoided looking at the ring on her finger because every time she did, her heart started racing. She was engaged. Actually engaged. To a man who'd seen her and wanted her and chosen her over every other option. It still didn't feel real. Rhett showed up just before closing, looking like he'd been working all day. His clothes were dusty, his hair windblown, and there was a cut on his hand that he hadn't bothered wrapping. You're hurt. He glanced at his hand like he'd forgotten about it. Caught it on a fence post. It's nothing. It needs cleaning. Clara pulled out the medical supplies she kept for emergencies. Sit down. Rhett obeyed, watching as she cleaned the cut with careful efficiency. Your mother came to see me today. Clara's hands stilled. What did she say? That I was making a mistake. That you were manipulating me for financial security. That I should end the engagement before it became public knowledge. He winced as Clara applied antiseptic. She was very thorough. I'm sorry. Don't be. I told her she was wrong about you, wrong about my intentions, and wrong to think she could change my mind. Clara wrapped his hand in clean bandaging, focusing on the task instead of the emotion threatening to spill over. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Nobody talks about you like that, especially not to me. Rhett caught her chin gently, making her look at him. I meant what I said last night. I'm all in. Your mother's disapproval doesn't change that. She's not the only one who disapproves. I know. Half the town thinks I've lost my mind. He smiled slightly. The other half thinks you've bewitched me. Have I? Completely. He kissed her, soft and brief. How are you holding up? Clara sighed and sat beside him on the counter. I keep waiting to feel different, like getting engaged should have changed something fundamental. But I still feel like me, still worried I'm not enough, still scared you'll wake up and realize what a mistake this is. How long do you think that'll last? I don't know, maybe forever. Then I'll spend forever proving you wrong. Rhett took her hand, his thumb tracing the ring. We don't have to rush the wedding if you're not ready. How long were you thinking? I'd marry you tomorrow if you wanted, but I know this is fast and I don't want you feeling pressured. Clara thought about it. A long engagement meant more time for people to talk them out of it, more opportunities for doubt to creep in, more chances for something to go wrong. But a quick wedding meant less time to prepare, less time to be sure. A month, she said finally. Rhett blinked. A month? Is that too fast? I just proposed last night. I wasn't expecting you to set a date before I'd even gotten the cut on my hand bandaged. He grinned. But yes, a month. We can do that. You sure? Clara, I'd marry you right now in this trading post with Sarah Chen as our only witness if that's what you wanted. A month gives us time to do it properly. He paused. Do you want a big wedding? The thought made her stomach turn. No, small. Just people who actually matter. That works for me. Rhett stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on, I want to show you something. Now? Now. He drove them out to his property in the fading light. The ranch house was taking shape. Walls up, roof partially complete, windows still just open frames. It looked raw and unfinished, but Clara could see the potential in every beam and board. It's coming together, she said. It will be finished in 3 weeks. I pushed the timeline. Rhett helped her down from the carriage. I wanted it ready before the wedding. Thought you might want input on the final details. He led her through the skeletal structure, pointing out where rooms would be, how the kitchen would flow into the main living space, where windows would frame the best views. Clara listened and tried to picture it completed, tried to imagine herself living here instead of in the cramped quarters above the trading post. What do you think? Rhett asked when they reached what would be the master bedroom. Clara looked out the empty window frame at the valley below. The last light was turning everything gold and amber. It's beautiful. Is it home? She turned to face him. I don't know yet. Ask me again after we've lived here a while. Fair enough. He moved closer. I know this is all happening fast. I know you're still scared, but I need you to understand something. What? This isn't just my ranch or my house. It's ours. Every decision we make here, we make together. You're not moving into my life, Clara. We're building a new one. The distinction mattered more than Clara could articulate. She'd spent her entire life fitting into spaces other people had already defined. The trading post was her father's dream. Her role in the family was what her mother needed. Even her relationship with Rhett had started with her trying to be whatever he wanted. But he was offering something different. Partnership. Equality. A life they'd create together instead of one she'd inherit. I want an office, she said suddenly. Rhett raised an eyebrow. An office? For the ranch records, water rights, grazing schedules, all of it. You said you wanted my help managing the land. I'll need a proper workspace. Done. Where do you want it? Clara looked around, calculating. Here. This room has the best light. But this is the master bedroom. So we'll use a different room for sleeping. This one's better suited for work. Rhett laughed. You want to turn our bedroom into an office. Is that a problem? Not even a little bit. He kissed her forehead. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You make me reconsider everything I thought I wanted. They stayed until full dark, planning modifications and arguing good-naturedly about furniture placement. It felt normal, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. On the drive back to town, Rhett said, I need to tell you something. Clara's stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. It's not bad, just complicated. He kept his eyes on the road. I got a letter from my father's lawyer today. Apparently there's an estate issue that needs resolving. I have to go back south for a few days. When? Day after tomorrow. Clara tried to ignore the panic rising in her chest. How long will you be gone? A week at most. Less, if I can manage it. He glanced at her. Come with me. What? Come with me. Meet the lawyer, see where I grew up, understand where I came from. He paused. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't want to leave you here alone to deal with all the gossip. Clara thought about it. Leaving Red Hollow meant abandoning the trading post, even temporarily. It meant trusting someone else to run things. It meant stepping even further outside her comfort zone. It also meant not being alone when the town's judgment reached its peak. Okay, she said. Okay. I'll come with you, but I need 2 days to arrange coverage for the shop. Rhett's smile was brilliant, even in the darkness. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I've never been further than 50 miles from Red Hollow. I might be terrible at traveling. Then we'll be terrible at it together. Sarah agreed to mind the trading post without hesitation. About time you saw something beyond this town. Go. Have an adventure. Come back married for all I care. We're not getting married in another territory. Why not? Save yourself the trouble of a Red Hollow wedding where half the guests are hoping you fail. Clara hadn't considered that option. Rhett wants to do it properly. Rhett wants you happy. There's a difference. Sarah started making a list of inventory tasks. Think about it. Quick ceremony somewhere nobody knows you, come back as a done deal. Cuts out all the drama. The idea had merit, but it also felt like running away, and Clara had spent enough of her life hiding. I'll think about it. She told her mother about the trip that evening. Margaret's response was predictable. You're traveling alone with a man you're not married to. We're engaged. That doesn't make it appropriate. I don't care about appropriate anymore. Clara folded clothes into a traveling bag. I'm going. You can disapprove if you want, but it won't change my decision. This is exactly what I was afraid of. He's changing you. Clara stopped packing and looked at her mother. No, I'm changing myself. Rhett just gave me permission to want more than survival. And when it falls apart, when he realizes you're not what he thought, what then? Then I'll deal with it. But I'd rather risk heartbreak than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. She resumed packing. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'll be back in a week. Margaret stood in the doorway a moment longer, then left without another word. Clara tried to ignore the guilt gnawing at her. She was allowed to make her own choices. She was allowed to want things. She just wished it didn't feel like betrayal. Lily came to her room late that night, slipping in quietly like she used to when they were children. You're really going, she said. I'm really going. Lily sat on the edge of the bed. I'm jealous. Of what? All of it. The proposal, the travel, the chance to be something other than what this town expects. She picked at the quilt. Thomas Morrison asked Father for permission to court me. Clara set down the shirt she'd been folding. That's good, isn't it? The Morrisons are well connected. Thomas is boring. He wants a wife who'll host dinners and produce children and never have an original thought. Lily's voice was bitter. He's exactly what Mother wants for me. What do you want? I don't know. That's the problem. Lily looked up. You always knew you wanted to run the trading post. You had a purpose beyond marriage. I don't have anything like that. So find something. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I'm not like you, Clara. I can't just decide to be different and make it happen. I don't have your strength. Clara sat beside her sister. You have plenty of strength. You just use it differently. You've navigated Mother's expectations and society's demands without losing yourself completely. That takes its own kind of courage. It doesn't feel courageous. It feels like slow suffocation. Then change it. Tell Thomas no. Find something you actually want to do. Stop waiting for permission. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm scared. Of what? Of disappointing everyone. Of making the wrong choice. Of ending up alone. Those are all valid fears, but they're not good enough reasons to trap yourself in a life you don't want. Clara took her sister's hand. You don't have to be like me, but you also don't have to be what Mother wants. You're allowed to find your own path. Even if it's messy? Especially if it's messy. Neat paths are usually the ones other people laid out for us. Lily squeezed her hand. When did you get so wise? About the same time I stopped apologizing for existing. Clara smiled. Come visit us at the ranch once we're settled. See what building your own life looks like. Maybe it'll give you ideas. Maybe. Lily stood. Be careful on your trip. And Clara? Yeah? I hope he makes you happy. Really happy. Not just content or comfortable, but genuinely happy. Me too. After Lily left, Clara finished packing. She kept catching glimpses of the ring on her finger and feeling that same jolt of disbelief. This was really happening. She was leaving Red Hollow, traveling to another territory, marrying a man she'd known for less than 2 months. It was reckless and impulsive and completely unlike her. It was also the first real choice she'd made in years. Rhett picked her up before dawn. The streets were empty, the town still sleeping. Clara looked back at the trading post as they drove away, memorizing the outline of the building she'd spent 7 years maintaining. Second thoughts? Rhett asked. A million thoughts. Second, third, fourth. Clara turned to face forward. But I'm still going. Good. The journey south took 3 days by stagecoach and train. Clara had never been on a train before. The speed was terrifying and exhilarating, the landscape blurring past faster than she could process. Rhett pointed out landmarks and told her stories about growing up in the Southern Territories. My father was hard. Military background, expected perfection from his sons. Rhett stared out the window. Michael was naturally good at everything, writing, shooting, charming people. I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That must have been difficult. It was. But it also made me appreciate things more when I earned them. He looked at her. I never understood people who just accepted what they were given without questioning it. You're the same way. Nothing's been handed to you, so you fight for what you want. Is that what I'm doing? Fighting? Aren't you? You fought your way through running a business you never wanted. You fought through this town's expectations. You're fighting through your own doubts right now. His expression was soft. You're one of the strongest people I know, Clara. You just don't see it yet. They arrived in Savannah late on the third day. The city was bigger than anything Clara had imagined. Buildings rose 3 and 4 stories high, streets crowded with carriages and people, noise and energy that made Red Hollow feel like a whisper in comparison. Is it too much? Rhett asked, watching her take it all in. It's overwhelming. We don't have to stay in the city. I can get us a room outside town. No. Clara took a breath. I want to see this. All of it. Show me your world. He took her to the lawyer's office first. The meeting was dry and technical, full of estate language Clara only partially understood. But she watched Rhett navigate it with practiced ease, saw how he commanded respect without demanding it. This was the life he'd left behind. Wealth, status, a world where people knew his name and family history. And he'd walked away from all of it to build something new in Red Hollow. Why did you really leave? Clara asked that night over dinner in a restaurant that probably cost more than a month of her trading post income. Rhett set down his fork. Honestly? Always. Because staying meant becoming someone I hated. My father wanted me to step into Michael's shoes. Marry well, expand the family business, produce heirs who'd carry on the Maddox name. He met her eyes. I tried for 2 years, courted appropriate women, attended the right social functions, said all the correct things, and I was miserable. What changed? I woke up one morning and couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything real. Everything was performance. Every conversation was calculated. Every smile was strategic. He reached across the table and took her hand. Then I came to Red Hollow and met you. And for the first time in years, I had a conversation that wasn't about what I could offer someone or what they could do for me. You talked to me like I was a person instead of a potential business opportunity. I insulted your land choices. You were honest. That's different. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I'd rather have your brutal honesty than 100 polite lies. They spent 2 more days in Savannah settling estate matters. Clara met some of Rhett's old acquaintances, endured their thinly veiled curiosity about who she was and where she'd come from. She watched them try to figure out what Rhett saw in her and came up empty. She understood their confusion. Standing in ballrooms that made Red Hollow's gatherings look provincial, surrounded by women who made Victoria Brennan look understated, Clara felt every inch of her inadequacy. These were the women Rhett could have chosen, women who knew which fork to use, how to navigate high society, what to say at fundraisers and charity events. Women who belonged in his world. On their last night, Clara stood on the hotel balcony and stared at the city lights. Rhett joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You've been quiet today. Just thinking. About? Clara gestured at the city. This could have been your life. Still could be if you wanted. Your father's business partners made it clear they'd welcome you back. I don't want to come back. Are you sure? Because looking at all this, I understand why people think I'm not enough for you. She turned to face him. You're giving up so much to be with me. I'm not giving up anything that mattered. Your family's legacy isn't mine to carry. That died with Michael. Rhett pulled her closer. Claire, I need you to understand something. This life looks impressive from the outside. Money, status, social connections. But it's hollow. Every relationship is transactional. Every friendship has an agenda. I spent 28 years in this world and never once felt like I could just exist without performing. And Red Hollow is different? Red Hollow has you. That makes it different. He cupped her face. Stop measuring yourself against a world I've already rejected. You're not competing with any of this. You've already won. Clara wanted to believe him, but doubt was a hard habit to break. They took the train back to Red Hollow the next morning. As the city faded behind them and the landscape turned back to open territory, Clara felt something loosen in her chest. She didn't belong in Savannah's ballrooms and estate offices. Maybe she didn't fully belong in Red Hollow either. But standing between both worlds, building something new with Rhett, she was starting to believe she could belong to herself. And that might be enough. Red Hollow looked smaller when they returned. Clara noticed it immediately, the way the buildings seemed to crowd closer together, the streets narrower than she remembered. A week away had shifted her perspective just enough to see the town differently. Or maybe she was the one who'd changed. Sarah was waiting at the trading post with a week's worth of receipts and a knowing smile. "You look different." "I'm the same person who left." "No, you're not. You're standing straighter." Sarah handed over the account books. "How was Savannah?" "Big. Overwhelming. Not for me." "Good, because this place needs you more than some fancy city does." Sarah glanced at the ring still on Clara's finger. "Wedding still happening?" "In 3 weeks." "Then we better start planning, unless you're doing it small?" "As small as possible. Maybe just us and whoever actually wants to be there." Sarah nodded approvingly. "Smart. No point feeding people who are hoping you fail." The next few weeks moved in a blur of activity. The ranch house was completed ahead of schedule. Clara divided her time between the trading post and helping Rhett set up the property, learning every corner of the land that would become their home. She met the ranch hands he'd hired, reviewed water schedules, and slowly started to see herself fitting into this new life. But Red Hollow wasn't done testing her. 2 weeks before the wedding, Victoria Brennan showed up at the ranch. Clara was in what would be her office, organizing record books, when she heard voices outside. She looked out the window and saw Victoria talking to Rhett near the main house. Clara's stomach tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. Victoria had every right to visit a neighboring property. This didn't have to mean anything. She went back to her inventory sheets and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety in her chest. 20 minutes later, Rhett appeared in the office doorway. His expression was unreadable. "Victoria just made me an interesting offer." Clara set down her pen. "What kind of offer?" "She's willing to sell me the water rights to the creek that runs between our properties. It would give us access to year-round water, which would change everything for the ranch." He leaned against the doorframe. "She wants $50,000. Clara did the math quickly. That was nearly triple what the rights were worth. That's extortion. That's negotiation. No, that's her trying to bankrupt you. Clara stood and crossed to the window. Victoria was still outside, examining the property with the air of someone appraising a purchase. She knows you need that water. She's using it as leverage. Leverage for what? Clara turned to face him. To prove I'm bad for your business. To show that choosing me has consequences. She kept her voice steady even though her heart was racing. If you pay that price, you'll be underwater financially for years. If you don't, she'll sell the rights to someone else, and you'll lose access to critical water sources. So what do you suggest? I suggest you tell her to go to hell and we find another solution. Rhett smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. You already told her no, didn't you? I told her I'd consider it and give her an answer by week's end. But yes, I have no intention of paying that price. He moved closer. I wanted to see what you'd say first. Why? Because this affects both of us. We're partners, Clara. That means we make decisions together. The word partners still felt foreign. Clara had spent so long being useful rather than equal that partnership required constant recalibration. There's another water source on the northern boundary, she said, pulling out the territory maps. It's harder to access, but it connects to the same aquifer. If we can negotiate rights there, Victoria's Creek becomes less critical. Rhett studied the map. That's Morrison property. Thomas Morrison's family, yes. Clara traced the boundary line. And Thomas has been courting Lily. Maybe we can work something out. You want to use your sister's courtship as business leverage? I want to find a solution that doesn't involve Victoria bleeding us dry. Clara met his eyes. Is that wrong? No, it's practical. Rhett pulled her close. This is exactly what I meant about being partners. You see angles I miss. I just know the territory. You know more than that. You understand people, leverage, how to navigate complicated situations. He kissed her forehead. Victoria's betting that I'll choose easy water access over standing by you. She's about to learn she bet wrong. They approached Thomas Morrison together that afternoon. He received them in his family's parlor, clearly surprised by the visit. Mr. Maddox, Clara. Thomas glanced between them. Is this about Lily? Partially, Clara said, but mostly about water rights. She laid out the proposal simply. Rhett needed access to the northern water source. Thomas's family owned the rights but weren't using them. In exchange for reasonable access fees, Rhett would provide Thomas with discounted supplies from the ranch and a partnership agreement that would benefit both properties. Thomas listened carefully, then said, Victoria approached my father last week, offered us a deal to restrict water access to your property. Rhett's expression hardened. Did you accept? No, but only because I told father I was interested in courting Lily seriously, and alienating her family seemed counterproductive. Thomas looked at Clara. Your sister's been clear that she's not interested in a traditional courtship. She wants time to figure out what she actually wants from life. And you're okay with that? I'm more interested in who she is than who she's supposed to be. Thomas smiled slightly. Turns out I'm not as boring as people think. I just needed someone to challenge me. Clara felt a rush of affection for this man she'd always dismissed as conventional. So you'll consider the water rights proposal? I'll do better than consider it. I'll accept it, with one condition. What condition? You invite me to the wedding, and let me bring Lily. Thomas leaned forward. I want her to see what it looks like when two people build something together instead of just filling roles. Might give her ideas. They shook on it. Walking back to the ranch, Rhett said, Your sister has good taste. Thomas Morrison? He's smarter than he looks, and he clearly cares more about Lily than about what people think he should want. Rhett squeezed her hand. Sounds familiar. The week before the wedding brought its own challenges. Clara's mother made one last attempt to talk her out of it, appearing at the ranch with tears and ultimatums. If you do this, you're choosing him over your family. Clara was organizing supplies in the kitchen, methodically arranging dishes that had just been delivered. She didn't stop working. I'm choosing myself, Mother. There's a difference. He'll change his mind eventually. Men like him always do. Maybe. Or maybe he won't. Either way, I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life wondering. Clara finally looked up. I love you, but I can't live my life according to your fears anymore. You'll regret this. Possibly, but they'll be my regrets, not yours. Margaret left, and Clara stood alone in the half-finished kitchen, trying not to cry. Choosing yourself was supposed to feel empowering. Instead, it just felt lonely. Rhett found her there an hour later, sitting on the floor surrounded by unpacked crates. Bad day? My mother thinks I'm ruining my life. Are you? Clara looked up at him. Ask me in 10 years? He sat beside her on the floor, both of them leaning against the wall. I talked to Victoria today. She's agreed to sell the water rights for fair market value. What changed her mind? I reminded her that obstruction makes enemies, and she needs allies more than she needs revenge. Rhett's voice was matter-of-fact. Also, Thomas Morrison apparently told his father about our partnership, and the Morrison family carries enough weight that Victoria couldn't afford to alienate them. So business politics saved us. Business politics and the fact that you saw the solution before I did. He took her hand. You're good at this, Clara. Better than you think. I just know the territory. You know people. That's worth more than territory knowledge. He pulled her to her feet. Come on. I want to show you something. He led her to the master bedroom, or what would have been the master bedroom before Clara claimed it for her office. The room was empty except for a large desk positioned near the window and a bookshelf built into the wall. I had the carpenter make these custom, Rhett said, based on your specifications from the trading post. Figured you'd want similar organization here. Clara ran her hand over the desk. The wood was smooth, well-crafted, clearly expensive. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You said you needed an office. I wanted it to be a real workspace, not just a gesture. She turned to face him, and the emotion in her chest finally spilled over. Why are you so good to me? Because you deserve it. Why is that so hard for you to believe? Because I've spent 26 years being told I'm useful but not valuable, that I'm competent but not desirable, that I'm the daughter who keeps things running, not the daughter anyone would choose. Her voice cracked. And then you showed up and treated me like I was worth something, and I still don't know if I'm allowed to believe it. Rhett crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. You're allowed. You've always been allowed. The world was just too stupid to tell you. Clara buried her face in his chest and let herself cry. All the fear and doubt and desperate hope she'd been holding back for weeks came pouring out. Rhett held her through it, not offering empty reassurances, just being present. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes were swollen. "I look terrible. You look human." He wiped tears from her cheeks. "I don't need you to be perfect, Clara. I just need you to be here." "I am. I'm here. I'm just also terrified." "Good. Me too." She laughed despite herself. "You're terrified." "Constantly. I'm terrified I'll disappoint you. Terrified I'm not good enough to deserve you. Terrified this whole thing will fall apart, and I'll lose the best thing that's ever happened to me." He smiled slightly. "We can be terrified together." The wedding day arrived faster than Clara expected. She woke in her room above the trading post one last time, staring at the ceiling she'd memorized over 7 years of early mornings and late nights. This was it. The last day she'd be Clara Whitmore, the invisible daughter. Tomorrow she'd be Clara Maddox, partner in a ranch and a marriage she still couldn't quite believe was real. Sarah arrived early with the wedding dress she'd insisted on making. It was simple, cream-colored cotton with minimal embellishment, but it fit Clara perfectly. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, adjusting the neckline. "I look nervous." "You look both." Sarah stepped back. "Lily's here. She wants to see you." Lily came in wearing a soft blue dress that made her look less like the perfect daughter and more like a real person. "Hi." "Hi." They stood awkwardly for a moment. Then Lily said, "I told Thomas I needed time to figure out what I want before I commit to anything." "How'd he take it?" "Better than I expected. He said he'd wait." Lily sat on the bed. "I've been watching you these past few weeks. The way you and Rhett work together. The way he listens to you like your opinion actually matters. I want that. Not Thomas specifically, but that kind of partnership." "You'll find it." "Will I?" "Because it seems like you had to fight for every inch of what you have. And I'm not sure I'm strong enough to fight like that." Clara sat beside her sister. "You're stronger than you think. You just haven't had to use it yet. But when you're ready, you'll surprise yourself." Lily leaned her head on Clara's shoulder. "I'm going to miss you." "I'm moving 5 miles away, not disappearing." "I know, but it won't be the same. You won't be here fixing everything. Maybe it's time you learn to fix things yourself." Clara squeezed her sister's hand. "You don't need me to keep you safe anymore, Lily. You never really did." The ceremony was small, held at the ranch under an open sky. Sarah and Thomas were there, along with a handful of ranch hands and townspeople who genuinely wished them well. Margaret didn't come. Clara tried not to let that hurt. The minister was brief and practical. Clara barely heard the words. She was too focused on Rhett's hands holding hers, steady and warm. Too focused on the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. When the minister said she could kiss her husband, Rhett pulled her close and whispered, "Last chance to run." "Too late. I already signed the papers." "Good." He kissed her, and Clara felt something settle into place. Not perfect, not without fear, but real and solid in hers. The celebration afterward was simple. Food, music, people actually dancing instead of just watching. Clara found herself pulled into conversations, included in jokes, treated like she belonged. It was disorienting and wonderful. Late in the evening, Victoria Brennan appeared at the edge of the property. Clara saw her from across the yard and tensed, but Victoria didn't approach. She just stood there for a moment, watching. Then she turned and left. "Let her go," Rhett said quietly beside Clara. "She'll find her own path eventually." "Do you think she actually wanted you, or just wanted to win?" "Does it matter?" Clara thought about it. "No, I suppose it doesn't." They spent their wedding night in the ranch house that was finally, officially theirs. The furniture was minimal, the rooms still echoing and incomplete. But lying beside Rhett in the darkness, Clara felt more at home than she ever had in the trading post. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I can't believe this is real." "It's real. You want me to prove it?" She laughed. "I believe you. I just keep waiting for something to go wrong. Things will go wrong. We'll fight about ranch management and budget allocations and probably 100 other things." Rhett rolled onto his side to face her. "But we'll figure it out together. That's the point of this." Clara traced patterns on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I never thought I'd have this. A partner. A home, someone who saw me." You always had it. You just needed someone to point it out. You make it sound simple. It is simple. You're extraordinary, Clara. You just spent so long being told you weren't that you forgot how to see it. She kissed him to avoid responding because words felt inadequate. But lying there in the darkness with her husband, Clara started to believe he might be right. Maybe she had always been enough. Maybe the world had just been looking in the wrong direction. The ranch settled into rhythm over the following months. Clara managed the business side with the same efficiency she'd brought to the trading post, but now she was building something instead of just maintaining it. Rhett handled the physical operations, but he consulted her on every major decision. They argued sometimes, fierce debates about expansion timing and resource allocation, but they always talked it through. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when Clara still woke up convinced this was temporary, that Rhett would eventually see her clearly and regret his choice. There were days when the work felt overwhelming and the isolation of ranch life pressed against her chest. But there were also mornings when she watched the sun rise over land they'd built together. Evenings when Rhett came in dusty and exhausted and still took time to ask about her day. Moments when she realized she'd stopped waiting for disaster and started living. 6 months after the wedding, Margaret appeared at the ranch. Clara was working in her office when she saw her mother's carriage approach. Her stomach tightened with old anxiety. "I'll handle this," Rhett said, appearing in the doorway. "No, she's my mother. I should talk to her." Clara met Margaret on the porch. Her mother looked older somehow, the lines around her mouth deeper. "I came to apologize," Margaret said without preamble. Clara blinked. "What?" "I was wrong. About Rhett. About you. About all of it." Margaret's voice was strained, like the words cost her. "I spent so long protecting you from disappointment that I couldn't see when something real was happening, and I pushed you away because of my own fear." "Mother, let me finish, please." Margaret took a breath. "Your father wasn't my first love, I told you that. What I didn't tell you was that I spent 20 years regretting the safe choice. He was a good man and I cared for him, but I never let myself love him completely because I was still protecting myself from the hurt my first love caused." Her eyes filled. "I didn't want you to take risks because I was terrified you'd get hurt like I did. But watching you these past months, seeing you build something real with Rhett, I realized I was trying to save you from pain by preventing you from joy. And that's worse." Clara felt her throat tighten. "You were trying to protect me. I was trying to protect myself by keeping you small and safe. That was selfish." Margaret reached out tentatively. "Can you forgive me?" Clara thought about all the years of criticism and low expectations, the constant message that she wasn't enough. The way her mother's fear had shaped Clara's entire understanding of her own worth. She should be angry. She had every right to be angry. But looking at her mother, really looking, Clara saw someone who'd been just as trapped as she'd been. Someone who'd let old hurt dictate decades of choices. Someone who was trying, however imperfectly, to change. "Yes," Clara said. "I forgive you." Margaret's expression crumpled with relief. "Thank you." "And Clara, you were right about all of it. About choosing yourself, about taking risks, about deserving more." She glanced toward the house where Rhett was visible through the window. "He's good for you. You're different now." "I'm not different. I'm just finally allowed to be myself." "Then I'm glad he saw what I was too afraid to see." They didn't hug. That would take time. But they sat on the porch together and talked, really talked, for the first time in years. About the ranch, about Lily's slowly blossoming independence, about the future instead of just surviving the present. When Margaret left, Clara felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Her mother's fear didn't excuse the damage, but it explained it, and Clara could let that be enough. Rhett found her still sitting on the porch after Margaret's carriage disappeared. "How'd it go?" "Better than expected, worse than hoped for, somewhere in the middle." Clara leaned against him. She apologized. That must have been hard for her. "Probably. She's not good at admitting she's wrong." Clara watched the sun set over the valley. "But she's trying, that's something." "It's more than something." Rhett kissed the top of her head. "You're allowed to take your time forgiving her completely, you know? Just because she apologized doesn't mean the hurt disappears." "I know, but holding on to anger takes energy I'd rather spend on other things. Like what? Clara smiled. Like figuring out how to expand the eastern pasture without depleting the water source, or arguing with you about whether we need more ranch hands, or just living. Just living sounds good. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled over the ranch. Clara thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, invisible, convinced of her own inadequacy, afraid to want anything. That woman felt like a stranger now. She wasn't perfect. She still had days when doubt crept in, when old insecurities whispered that this was all temporary. But she'd learned that doubt didn't have to be debilitating. Fear didn't have to be fate. Rhett? Yeah? Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. He pulled her closer. Thank you for letting me. That took more courage than you realize. A year and a half after the wedding, Clara found out she was pregnant. The news was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. She told Rhett one evening while they were reviewing ranch accounts, blurting it out between discussions of cattle prices and feed costs. He stared at her for a long moment, then said, "Say that again. I'm pregnant. About 3 months, I think." Rhett's smile was brilliant. Then it faded slightly. How do you feel about it? Terrified, excited, completely unprepared. Clara set down her pen. What if I'm terrible at it? At being a mother? At all of it? What if I mess everything up? Then we'll fix it together. Rhett moved around the desk and pulled her to her feet. Clara, you ran a business at 19. You rebuilt your family's finances. You helped design and manage this entire ranch. You can handle a baby. That's different. Babies are people. What if I damage them? What if you don't? What if you're exactly what they need? Clara leaned into him, letting his certainty steady her. I don't know how to do this. Nobody does. We'll figure it out as we go. The pregnancy was difficult. Clara was sick for months, exhausted beyond anything she'd experienced. There were days when she couldn't work, when she had to trust Rhett and the ranch hands to handle everything. Letting go of control was harder than the physical discomfort, but slowly she learned to ask for help, learned that needing support didn't mean she was weak, learned that partnership meant carrying each other through the hard parts. Their daughter arrived on a cold morning in early spring. The labor was long and brutal, and Clara was convinced she was going to die. But when the midwife finally placed the baby in her arms, tiny and red-faced and screaming, something shifted in Clara's chest. She's perfect, Rhett whispered, touching the baby's impossibly small hand. She's a person. Clara stared at her daughter in wonder. We made a whole person. We did. What should we call her? They discussed names for months without deciding, but looking at this tiny human who'd fought her way into the world with determination and noise, Clara knew. Hope. Rhett smiled. Hope Maddox. I like it. Margaret came to meet her granddaughter a week later. She held Hope with the careful reverence of someone who'd forgotten how small babies were, tears streaming down her face. She looks like you did. Same expression, like she's already analyzing everything. Clara watched her mother cradle the baby and felt years of resentment finally fully release. You can visit whenever you want. She should know her grandmother. Margaret looked up, surprised. You'd let me? Your family, and I want Hope to grow up surrounded by people who love her, even imperfect people who've made mistakes. Especially those people, Rhett added. They're the honest ones. Life settled into a new rhythm after Hope arrived. The ranch continued growing, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Clara's expertise in water management and land use became widely respected. Other ranchers started consulting her, paying for her knowledge the same way Rhett had. She hired help for the trading post and transformed it into a consulting business, teaching other women how to manage property and finances. Sarah ran the day-to-day operations while Clara focused on the ranch and raising Hope. Lily eventually married Thomas Morrison, but on her own terms. She made him wait 2 years while she figured out what she wanted from life. Their wedding was small and genuine, 2 people choosing each other instead of fulfilling expectations. Red Hollow never fully stopped gossiping about Clara and Rhett, but the gossip shifted from scandal to grudging respect. The woman nobody chose had built something undeniable, and eventually, even the harshest critics had to acknowledge it. 5 years after the wedding, Clara stood on the porch of the ranch house watching Hope chase chickens in the yard. The little girl was fearless and loud and completely herself. She'd never known what it felt like to be invisible. Rhett joined Clara, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm glad I said yes. To the proposal. To all of it. The courtship, the marriage, the risk." Clara leaned back against him. "I spent so long being afraid of wanting things that I almost missed this entire life." "But you didn't miss it. You chose it." "We chose it," Claire corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone. Neither could I. That's the point." He kissed her temple. "We built something better together than either of us could have managed separately." Hope ran up to the porch, dirt-streaked and grinning. "Mama, can I help with the horses?" "After you wash up and finish your lessons." "But Mama—" "Lessons first, then horses. That's the deal." Hope grumbled but ran inside to her books. Clara watched her go and smiled. "She's going to be trouble," Rhett said. "Good. The world needs more trouble from women who know their worth." "Speaking from experience?" "Always." Years later, when Hope was old enough to understand, Clara told her the story of how she and Rhett met, about being invisible and learning to be seen, about taking risks and building something real from fear and hope and stubborn determination. "So you were scared?" Hope asked. "Terrified." "But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway, because being scared isn't a good enough reason to give up on something that matters." Hope thought about that for a moment. "I'm glad you weren't too scared. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here." Clara pulled her daughter close. "Me too, baby. Me too." Standing there with her child in her arms and her husband beside her, Clara understood something she'd spent 26 years learning. She hadn't been small. She'd never been small. She'd just been surrounded by people who couldn't see past their own limitations. The moment she stopped measuring herself by their standards and started believing in her own worth, everything changed. She'd claimed a life she'd been told she didn't deserve, built a home with someone who saw her completely, raised a daughter who would never question whether she was enough. And beneath the endless western sky, on land she'd helped transform from raw possibility into something lasting. Clara Maddox finally knew the truth she'd been searching for her entire life. She'd always been worth choosing. She'd always been extraordinary. She'd always been exactly who she was supposed to be. The world had simply needed time to catch up.